Hello, hello, good afternoon. My name is Tim with Right Rudder Marketing. You are listening to the Aviation Business Podcast. Today we have a very special guest. We have Avemco with us. Kim Skipper from Avemco is our featured guest today here on the Right Rudder Aviation Business Podcast. So, you know, I personally use Avemco for my renter's insurance, so I know the team there firsthand. But I wanted to get them on the podcast because they have such a great insight to the aviation industry. They get to see it from a different perspective. So a lot of times as pilots, we see it through our students, we see it through the colleagues we work with, and other pilots around. But then if you work in insurance, you kind of see another side of the coin. So I'm very looking forward to hearing what Kim has to talk about with Avemco. And I won't give her too much of an introduction. I'll let her kind of give herself an introduction here. Kim, if you can kind of introduce yourself, tell us who you are and how you got started with Avemco and also in the aviation industry.
My name is Kim Skipper. I am the underwriting manager at Avemco Insurance Company. I have been working here for 38 years. My path to aviation started back in the early 70s. My dad was a big aviation person, and that was back when you could actually go up to the gates and watch the jets coming in and out. So that was how we spent our Sunday afternoons frequently. Fast forward to the 80s, and he started taking us up. He had friends that had small airplanes, and that's where I started my passion for aviation, so to speak. Leaving school, I was looking for a place to work, and an employment agency kind of matched me up with the company. And I started there, and I found that, wow, it just melded a lot of things I like to deal with into one nice package, and I've been here ever since.
So I know what Avemco is, but maybe some of the listeners may not know what Avemco is. So what is Avemco, and what is insurance?
Okay. We'll start with Avemco. We are the only direct writer of aviation insurance in the country. What that means is you're talking actually to the company that is writing the policy, servicing the policy, and ultimately going to be writing the claims in the event that the unfortunate happens. The other markets all are an insurance company, and you're talking to a broker or an agent that acts as an intermediary between yourself and the company. We insure light airplanes, both single engine and multi-engine piston. We do home-built seaplanes, gliders, used for your own personal use.
Okay. So Avemco offers insurance for pilots and renters, correct?
Correct.
And now, with Avemco being one of the bigger insurance companies out there, I was listening to a NAFI podcast, National Association of Flight Instructors, and they had you on the podcast a little while ago. And
They
we'll
did.
kind of we'll kind of cherry pick from them as well, or learn from them, or read from their coattails, I suppose. One of the interesting topics they talked about was, as an insurance company, you guys get claims. I'm sure, hopefully not every day, but if you guys get claims, some of them are very normal, like maybe a hanger rash, for example, might be a very common one. I'm not sure, I'm not well versed, but like you might see, I guess that's a good question. What are some of the common claims you might see as in the insurance world? What are the most common accidents or incidents that occur with airplanes and pilots, and what are some tips we can do for preventing that?
You mentioned, I'll start with what you mentioned, hanger rash. That is one of the biggest claims we do see as far as ground handling that you can actually do something about. Know where your airplane is, know where the wing tips are. Don't rely on, well, I don't have to open the hangar door all the way to squeeze it in. Invariably, we get the dents and the dings. If you bolt down or put just wood blocks on your floor, chocks in a hangar to know where to stop, be cautious, because over time they're going to slide backwards just a little bit each time, and the next thing you know, you've got the tail strike on the back wall of the hangar and you're making that phone call to Avemco.
Oof, that's rough.
So that's a real common issue. We see a lot of taxi incidents, and a lot of that is
Really?
distraction, and that seems to be with more experienced pilots. The brand new private pilots are still very focused on taxiing down the runway, heads out. They're not trying to program the navs. They're not, getting everything ready. And that's where we do see a lot of, a clip of a wing, a prop strike on a cone that they just didn't see. So that they're
Wow.
common. And landings. That definitely, as we
Yeah.
all know, Takeoffs are optional, landings are kind of mandatory, but we see a lot of hard landings, the retractables, you have gear
I was like, gear up
failures.
landing is probably every.
Gear ups as well, ground loops, hard landings, excessive braking. You end up nosing over and hitting the prop, and then you've got the prop strike and the engine teardown that's involved. There's some of the very common. I mean, we all see the unfortunate ones that occur for unexplained reasons, that they were flying and just unknown reason crashed. But we do see a lot on landing.
Yeah, I would think that just from me flying around, the most common ones would have hangar rash and then landings, I think. So the taxi one was kind of interesting to me. I would think that people would, pay attention when they're taxiing. One of the things I learned when I was, flying was that when you're taxiing, you only taxi. You don't adjust, the navs. You don't adjust the VORs. You don't program it. And this is more for check ride prep, but I just kept it going throughout my entire flying journey. If you start programming stuff while you're taxiing, that's instant. That's not a good thing to do it during a check ride. So if you're not going to do it during a check ride, why are you doing it?
Exactly.
When you're flying by yourself with friends and family, why would you fly any differently than on a check ride, right?
Yeah. And we do get a lot of that, and a lot of customers are forthright and say, well, my head was down because I was programming. And they've learned their lesson, unfortunately.
So if they're okay, this is more of because I know in the auto insurance industry, if you're at fault, then the insurance company will not compensate or pay out. So if in this case, let's say a taxiing issue, I have renter's insurance. I fly out of a flight school here in St. Louis, and then I have my head down for some unknown reason, and then I accidentally taxi into the grass, and then I hit, I don't know, one of the signs, and then I get a prop strike. Basically, it's my fault, I guess, because
Right.
I'm looking down. Does Avemco still, or do most aviation insurance companies still pay out, or is it all kind of on the pilot?
Most policies are going to pay out on that scenario, provided all the other terms or conditions. You paid it. It's in effect. You purchased the right coverage limits for that, but they are going to pay for those type of things, as well as most of your auto carriers. If you get distracted and run a red light, most of them are not going to deny the claim because you hit another car, for the most part, just for the general insurance knowledge piece.
From what I understand, too, so let's take it down to the renter level, because that's where a lot of people start off at. Then we can go into the owner level. But for renters, some flight schools do require to have renter's insurance. That's on top of what the flight school has, and I know Avemco doesn't necessarily. I don't believe you guys offer insurance to the flight school. You offer it to the pilots and then the instructors and CFIs too, or no?
Correct. We
Okay.
do, for both the pilots.
So if that's the case, then me as a renter or me as a CFI, if I get into a mishap, I don't want to even say accident because that's not really the right term. But if I get into some type of thing that involves a claim, believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, so the flight school insurance would then kind of have X amount of fees, and then they have a deductible, and then my insurance with Avemco or whomever would then, the reason I have that insurance is to pay that deductible. Is that correct or no?
It can do a couple of things. One, it could help pay for the deductible of the flight school. It also provides the legal defense, and I'll circle back to that in a moment, as well as any lost revenue that may occur. And in a lot of cases, depending on the flight school's insurance, their insurance company might pay for the damage, but then turn around and they can do what's called subrogate, which ultimately means they're coming to Tim and saying, we just paid $30,000 for damage you did to the airplane. We want you to reimburse us for it because you caused it. And that all of that is built into our aircraft damage portion of the policy. But you do have to be at fault for the damage in order for it to pay out. So if it's a maintenance error or maintenance issue, let's say you are flying a retractable gear airplane and you come in for landing, you've put the gear down, they're all green, it locks. As you're going down the runway, the gear collapses. You're typically not at fault for the maintenance because you don't own the airplane. So in that type of situation, or the other one we see a lot is a bird strike. You're really not at fault for that. But the policy will pay out for the up to $1,000 of no fault but we also will have our attorneys and claims department fight against the other insurance company saying you're not at fault for it, you shouldn't have to pay. So we're not leaving you out there by yourself.
Got it. Yeah, so I think our producer just put this on the screen here. So on the topic of flight schools and their student pilots, like I said, I mentioned like some of my flight schools I fly at, they require me to have insurance. And then they said that before for aircraft damage coverage, their renter's agreement said that they have to have at least $10,000 worth of insurance. Now they've updated this one particular flight school has updated their insurance, according to the question, to $50K of aircraft damage coverage. Is that too much, or is that adequate, or what's your kind of take on how much should renters at flight schools really be paying or be taking for insurance?
It depends a lot on what type of airplane you're flying and the overall value. Realistically, you could be responsible for the full value and full damage to to the entire airplane. So if you're only flying a $30,000 or $40,000 airplane, that might be enough. If you're flying one that's far more expensive, you may want more because you could be held responsible for the full damage, depending on what insurance what insurance and what the provisions of the owner's insurance policy actually says.
So it's kind of a weird dynamic happening with the market for Cessna 172s. So I mean, like, I remember when I first started flying, like, you can buy one for like $50K. Now, let's say a 50-year-old Cessna 172, like from 1970 or something like that, it's no longer a $50,000 airplane. It's like a $150,000 to $200,000 airplane for some reason now. I'm just like, why is this the case? Then you have like a Cirrus, for example, like SR-22, that's like $500,000. So you have kind of two different tiers here. Most flight schools I work with or talk to or I fly at personally, they usually either have pre-2000 models, so like the 1970s, 1980s, Cessna 172s. Those average, I want to say pricing-wise, $120K is the hull worth, I would assume. Then you have some other flight schools that are a little more, they cater to a more affluent crowd, I would say. And they have, let's say post-2000 year model Cessna 172s with like G1000s in it, or like, G500s or something like that. And those can be valued at like $200 to $300K. So for let's say a 172, that's, like most flight schools, I want to say like 60% to 80% of flight schools are using these type of Cessnas that are from like 1970s. What amount of aircraft damage coverage is required, or would you recommend for the renter?
We typically, as far as recommending, you want to have a coverage without knowing what the underlying policy is, something that could cover you in the event you damage and total the airplane. But you also do have to balance that with affordability, and what you're willing to pay. You obviously want to have enough coverage to take care of a lot of your more common losses. If you're not going to go full value, at least have enough to cover, a general, if you hit the prop, you've got a prop strike and an engine tear down. Things that used to take a couple of weeks to repair are now taking months and months. And during that time, the flight school is not earning revenue on that airplane, and they could hold you responsible for that as well.
Do they put claims for that, for lost revenue opportunities?
We do.
Oh, wow.
We do see that.
Okay, that's interesting stuff here. So I think it really depends on each use case. I think if you have, kind of just hearing what Kim's saying here, if people in the audience are asking for more specific questions, I would encourage them to reach out to Kim from Avemco, or even whoever your primary insurance provider is. I think that they'd be able to, it's rather than just kind of go off on the podcast about different value rates. I think it might be beneficial just because your use case and your scenario is different, and everyone's unique. Everyone has their own situation that might be different. But on a general, I think $50,000 or $10,000 is more than adequate for these, especially if you have the flight school you're working with does have their own insurance for their own planes. We went over some of the common claims that you see. So tails, hangar rash, prop strikes, endings. What are some of the, let's get into some fun stuff. What are some of the crazy and unusual claims that you might have seen at that you're able to share with the community?
I can share in general terms. We won't name names or name airplanes, so to
Right.
speak, to keep everyone safe. But most of the what I would call unusual tend to be caused by other than a pilot error type situation. We had a case I remember, now this is going back quite a few years, where in a huge windstorm, a porta pot blew across the field and hit an airplane. And obviously it was very windy, but that was one that you're like, I saw it come across and I doubled, did I read that right? And sure enough, that's what had happened. Definitely, did some damage to the airplane, didn't destroy it, but it needed to be repaired. We've seen an air stair that wasn't chalked appropriately, again in wind, blow across the field and hit an airplane. That tends to be more on the owner side, but obviously just unusual. Animals tend to do a lot of damage. You have your ones you would hear and think about are your bird strikes, deer running across the runway. What you may not think about is a polar bear attacking a fabric airplane because it had previously been used on a hunting trip, and there was the smell of a dead animal in it, and he ripped it to shreds, trying to get in to get what he thought was dinner.
It sounds like Alaska, to be honest with you.
That would be your guess would be absolutely correct. That was in Alaska. And then we've seen some other issues where cows have wandered into an open hangar and used the ailerons as a back scratcher. You'd be amazed at the amount of dents they can put into it.
Wow.
So we've had that kind of thing. We've had some other, I guess you could say maybe pilot error and things you could do to prevent them is things that are loose in the airplane itself, not being secured, and you hit some turbulence. We've had wheel chocks go through the window, unsecured ladders.
Fire extinguishers, I think I heard is
fire extinguisher. The fire extinguisher was actually bolted in and had a bracket. The bracket failed.
Yeah.
And the gentleman was doing aerobatics and it hit the windshield.
Oh my dear.
And then the windscreen.
I guess they need to add that into like an AD or something like that.
Yeah, it was
secure your straps.
Something that people don't think. They made sure it was secured, but I guess over time the bracket had worn and it failed, and as such, I mean, he was lucky in that it hit the airplane and not hit him.
Yeah, that would have been worse, I guess. Wow, some crazy stories out there for for insurance companies, and also the claims that happen. Let's kind of bring it back, the conversation to, when we're choosing insurance, I think there's different options out there. And so I guess, can you give us a briefer on like what types of insurance you guys offer, and also what do pilots need to know when they decide to choose either their owner or a renter? What do they need to know when making the right choice for their insurance company?
We'll start with the right choice for insurance company. You want a company that has been around. They have a good reputation, not only on the service side, but in the event of a mishap, that they're going to actually be there to pay the claim and not be looking to a way to avoid paying it. Avemco has been A++ AM Best rated. There's a rating that is done based on financial stability. The other thing that I think is one of a very large misconception is aviation insurance is not like auto insurance, where if you go to a couple of the big name companies, your policy's going to be pretty similar as to what is and what is not covered. Aviation is not like that. So while the limits you're getting may appear to be the same thing and the pricing is significantly different, normally it's because of what I'll call the contract behind it. What are we covering versus what are we not covering? What deductibles you may or may not have. So that's really important, is not just to look at the overall limits and the coverage options they've given you, but to read the policy, because that is where the differences truly lie in aviation insurance.
Got it. So really, as pilots, we need to read the fine lines. So I know we get enough of the FAR-AIM and read all the regulations. I guess, part of being a pilot is also being a lawyer. So you gotta, I guess, understand what the terms and conditions are and the limitations of each policy, and then I think you can kind of decide for yourself what the best plan is. I like Avemco, just because that's what I use. I have used, I think, another one. I think it was flight training insurance. I forgot what it was. I think it was through AOPA or something like that. They had given me it, but then after working with Marcy and talking around, and also talking to other pilots, they've recommended me Avemco. So
Hmm.
I'm a little biased, but then again, that's why you're on the show.
That's right.
One of the things that we mentioned before, this is our first time meeting us on video, but we have been talking back and forth, and I also know a few people on the Avemco team there.
Hmm.
One of the things that was brought up was the Avemco Partner Program.
Hmm.
So, can you kind of explain what that is, who it's for, and then who it benefits, and what is it all about?
It is basically, it's a referral marketing campaign set up for flight schools. It allows you to send your customers our way to get policies and or quotes. We provide you with a lot of marketing details. There's stickers and giveaways that we can provide the school, as well as our brochures and marketing materials. In addition, it just a contract between you and us. It doesn't alter the actual terms and conditions of the policy. There's nothing that you really need to do as a flight school on your part. We do all of the fulfillment and documentation. You're not actually selling our product. We also put out safety newsletters and safety papers to let you know what's going on in the industry, the types of claims we're seeing, and maybe how you can set yourself up to prevent them from happening.
Got it. So it's a referral program for
Correct.
flight school owners. So a lot of our audience members or people that listen to this podcast are flight school owners.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a very good benefit for them to explore. And then they get a kick. I'm assuming they get a small kickback if they have their students become, or no?
It's just a referral program.
Okay. So it's a small referral program
Mm-hmm.
for flight schools to offer to their students. Great. So, I have a question for you. Is insurance mandatory if I'm a student pilot?
If you're a student pilot, in a lot of cases, as a pilot, or as an aircraft owner, most states don't actually require you to carry insurance, which I think surprises a lot of people. Is it necessarily a good idea not to have it? That I'm slightly biased, obviously, because I work for
Yeah.
the insurance company, but in your own personal life, are you willing to take that risk of injuring someone in a mishap and having the knowledge and the financial ability to take care of that situation?
Got it. So it's highly recommended to have
It is.
insurance then. What does Avemco do whenever they're working with a new pilot, whether they're a student pilot or they're switching over from another insurance company? What does Avemco do to help that pilot understand what the right coverage is for them?
We ask questions, find out what their type of airplane they're flying, how often they're flying, what their needs are, what type of airplane they're flying, what area they're flying from, and then we go over the different options. We talk to the customer because it could be a brand new student pilot that has absolutely no understanding of the insurance or the coverage is available versus that conversation with someone that's been doing it for 40 or 50 years that understands what they're purchasing. So we tend to tailor the conversation to what is needed by that customer at that time.
Yeah, I think when I first started out, I didn't really know much about. I still don't really understand the insurance aspect. I just pray to God I don't have to ever deal with you guys. That's kind of my take on it. But as far as me, I kind of understand a little bit just because obviously I'm talking to you right now, and I've also talked to like Marcy and them, and I've done my own research. But like my case is not shared with a lot of other people. A lot of people don't have the opportunity to meet people like high up in an insurance company or meet industry leaders in aviation. So for people just starting out, what can flight schools do? Because there's a lot of people that come to flight school that are kind of glassy-eyed. They see the flying planes. They want to, get the flight hours in. They want to get the training done. And it's really on the flight school and the CFIs to kind of educate them, and because they're like they're initiating them into this culture, this aviation culture, right?
Right.
And insurance rarely comes up in this topic, but let's say it does, and it should.
Mm-hmm.
What advice could flight schools give to their students, whether they're flight schools or CFIs? What advice can we give to our students when selecting the right insurance?
It would be just a matter of obviously referring them. One, they should get it. We certainly are not going to say don't send them our way because we'd love to have them come our way. You asked. Also, just letting them know that they may have a need for it because the flight school's policy may or may not provide the coverage for them. In addition, it's a benefit to know that you as the renter pilot or the student, you've got coverage that's following you around. You know it's up to date, you know it's current, you know what type of coverage you have. A lot of renting airplanes or borrowing a friend's airplane just assume they have coverage or they don't need anything. The airplane's covered, I don't need anything. And unfortunately find out after the fact that it really isn't designed to cover you as the renter pilot.
So do policies with insurance companies, there's different types of policies. So we kind of went over a few of them. So you have the renter's policy, the owner's policy, and
Right.
of course we're not getting to flight school insurance.
Right.
Now let's break it down a little bit further. So the renter's insurance, that follows me as a pilot, not so much the
Correct.
plane. It's not insuring the plane. So it's different than auto insurance that follows the vehicle. It's actually
Right.
follows. So I can rent any other airplane and that covers me with the insurance I have, right?
Correct. It follows you. There's a definition of non-owned airplane, so it's your single engine, no more than 7 seats, standard airworthiness certificate, less than 450 horsepower. So if it fits in that realm of what's a non-owned airplane, as well as some ownership, you can't have an ownership interest in it, then it's a non-owned airplane, and that policy is designed to allow you to jump from school to school and airplane to airplane.
Got it. And then now if I'm an owner of an airplane, is that insuring me as an owner or insuring the airplane?
It's ensuring you as the owner of that airplane and the use of that airplane.
Okay. If I allow a friend to fly my plane without me in it, does my policy cover that? Or is it specific for each person?
It's specific to each person and policy. If you're going to let them use it routinely, they should be listed as one of what we call an approved pilot on the policy. Some policies may have a provision that lets an occasional type user fly it without being named, but each policy and provision could be different as far as what is or is not allowed.
Appreciate the breakdown of insurance there. And then flight school insurance is a whole different topic as well. So
Correct.
those are the three main insurance, I guess, policies for aviation insurance. Is that correct? Or did I miss one?
They're the three primary. You've got the coverage for the renter borrower. You have the owner that's flying it just for their own pleasure use, and then you have the commercial, which is where your flight schools are typically going to fall. Or if you're flying it and people for hire, that type of thing, you're going to need more of what would be a commercial policy.
I think, okay, I'm kind of deviating from the script here, but
That's okay.
I remember at some type of conference or trade show, I think it was Flight School Association, they were talking about CFIs and having them also have their own insurance. Is this separate than all this stuff, or is that the same as like a renter's insurance?
Good question. That is actually, we offer the renter borrowers. You can buy that as a private or student pilot flying just for your own personal use, but there is also a product available for the flight instructor that is instructing in rented or borrowed airplanes, or perhaps you're instructing in owners' airplanes where you're going to the owner and instructing in them.
Right.
And it provides you the liability coverage for that.
If I'm a freshly minted CFI, do I guess it's kind of, I'm asking straight from insurance companies, so I know the answer is yes, but if I'm a freshly minted CFI, do I need to get CFI insurance, and why?
Why is most of your policies when you're instructing in an airplane, their policy is designed to protect the owner of the aircraft and not extend out to cover aviation professionals acting in their capacity. So they may protect the airplane that was destroyed while you were instructing in it, but if you get sued as a result of it because you injured someone, the owner's policy is going to say, we're not covering Tim. That becomes Tim's issue, as well as if they can see that it was your instruction or you that caused the damage to the airplane. Most owners' policies reserve the right to come back to you to collect. That's the subrogation word we used before. And collect from you the damage they just paid. And that's where that CFI policy would come in. It would defend and pay out on your behalf should the need occur.
So you heard it from the horse's mouth here, guys. If you're a CFI and you do not have insurance, you should get it right away. Come on, guys, get with the program.
Exactly.
Okay. Let's see here. Let's talk about trends. So we kind of went over like some of the common claims and some of the unusual claims here. It's been interesting past couple of years. I think the industry is rapidly changing, especially now with us in the aviation industry getting a lot of news coverage, to be honest with you. And also with the state of the market and the current administration, a lot of stuff is, it's like a mixing pot. Everything's getting mixed around, right? Is there specific trends occurring in the industry that you think flight schools and renters should be aware about?
Just overall, use your best judgment, use your caution. As far as trends that we're still seeing the same type of claims year in and year out. Although recently we've seen an uptick on claims related to excessive and hard braking, especially with student pilots. Is it an issue of training, or is it just happened to be that we got 4 or 5 of them in the last couple of weeks? But that is a very concerning trend. In a lot of cases, the student is with the flight instructor at the time that it's occurring. So just being mindful of that type of thing.
Does that really cause a claim to occur? So if they do excessive braking, wouldn't it just make the tires bald and then they just got to replace the tires?
It can destroy the tires, cause further damage. So we have seen claims to that effect recently.
Wow. One of the things that they did when I was getting my private was, I guess I don't know, and I don't know if CFIs are going to agree with me or flight school owners are going to agree with me with this one, but like my CFI just said, okay, when you do a short field landing, you do simulated braking. You don't actually brake. I'm like, okay. So when we land, I have to explicitly say, okay, simulated braking. But I don't know. I'm sure every flight school and other CFIs have their own opinion on whether or not to actually brake versus simulated brake. And I think DPs might have their own opinion on that too. So I won't get too further into that. But it's kind of surprising that braking is honestly getting up there as far as claims for insurance. I would have never have guessed that.
Yeah, it is a claim that you might see 1 or 2 every now and again over the last 10 or 15 years, but over the last, I would say, month or 2, we've seen a little bit of an uptick in that.
Do you think it's the way that we're training the next generation of pilots? I mean, a lot of them are training to, and this is a common theme I've heard from DPEs, a common theme I've heard from, senior CFIs, people that have been in the industry for quite a while. A lot of people are saying that we're training our pilots to the minimums, and we're just rushing them through flight school and ground school as quick as possible so they can get their CFI and get their 1,500 hours and get out. Do you think that, and I think it's slowing down recently, to be honest with you, especially with the airlines, having a lot of hiring freezes or slowdowns. We're seeing less aggressive, push this pilot out as quick as possible. But that's been the trend for the past 2 years was getting these people out there as quick as possible. Do you think that the way we're training pilots currently has room for improvement, and if so, like where can we improve our training?
Overall, I think everyone can improve. We never want to train to just be in baseline minimums. Even when you're out on your own as a private pilot, the FAA's got their minimums. That doesn't mean that that's right for you. You want to set your own personal minimums based on your set of circumstances. And you want to really be sure that you're training, as a CFI, you're training these people that they are ready to go fly. Not, they were able to do that one time, I can check them off and move them along the system. Maybe that's not always the right training scenario. And again, that depends on the individual. Maybe the individual is such that is what needs to be done and can be done. But if you're not sure that they actually can handle that task, you don't want to rush them out the door, because it doesn't bode well for the industry as a whole.
No, it does not. So my question is kind of twofold here. So
sure.
Recently we have seen a lot of new pilots getting freshly minted and going on to the airlines or being CFIs. So in my eyes, there's been a steady increase in the amount of pilots being generated in America. Obviously, there was a big, if you think historically, I think with like World War II and stuff like that, and like you had a lot of ex-military being, that kind of funneled into the airlines and general aviation. This was like in the 70s and 80s. and then there's a small dip for a while where there's not many pilots out there. That really recently, in the past 10 years, we've been kind of training, and overall, I think right now we're at a few 100,000 pilots in the U.S., which is about less than 1% of the population still, but it is growing. And you think that with more pilots out there, the cost would go down because there's more people, there's a higher supply of pilots, so there's more impetus to build more planes, build more all this stuff. But it's actually the opposite that I see that's happening. It's actually the costs are going up. So what can we do as a whole industry to reduce cost with flight training? I know it's a very open-ended question there, but I think insurance is one of the big things that people talk about when they talk about costs.
Yeah.
So that's why I kind of bring that up.
I would say do everything you can to avoid being that pilot that has the claim. Unfortunately, with the status of the state of the industry, parts availability, all of that adds on. Cost to repair and replace airplanes have gone up. Litigation costs go up. That's all part of the pricing of insurance because we are actually paying for all of that rolled into one. And it's unlike a lot of products on the market in that you know what it costs to make that product, you know what you need to get out of it to sell it. We sell the product not knowing what ultimately Tim is going to cost me, to use your name in this case, until well after the policy actually has expired. But you are grouped in with a lot of pilots. The claims of a few are paid for by the many. It's the premise of insurance.
With more pilots being generated, in recent times, how does that affect the aviation insurance landscape? Does that cause, because you have more people paying into the system, that the cost goes down, or is it because there's more pilots out there, there's more claims, so actually the cost is going up?
I would say that even though there's more pilots coming in, their overall claim frequency, so how many claims do we have per 100 or 100 policies that we write, that number really hasn't changed. So having less pilots doesn't really impact it from that standpoint. Now, the more pilots that we get, the safer they become, the less likely we have claims. That's a way to, potentially help save overall the industry and keep costs down. And then, as you're aware with Avemco, we do offer discounting for doing things above and beyond FAA minimums. So there are some discounting involved because we want and encourage our pilots to be safer. It bodes well for them and us.
Yeah. Let's talk about that for a bit. So what are some discounts? I love discounts. Everyone loves discounts. I think obviously, let's say I'm a student. So I think from just off the top of my head, I know there's a few out there. I won't give them away. I'll let you kind of take it. But I'm assuming, let's say I'm a student pilot, my insurance is going to be higher compared to, say, a private pilot, which is going to be higher compared to, let's say, an instrument-rated pilot, which again will be higher than, let's say, a commercial pilot. And then I'm assuming, I think, if I remember this right, the cost actually goes down, the more hours you get, but then between, I think, was it 250 hours to like 750 hours, the cost actually goes up because people get complacent. I don't know if this is correct or not, but
not overall. As far as now, this is talking on the owned airplane side is where these figures tend to come in. But yes, as a student pilot, your rates are going to be higher than a private pilot in that same make and model airplane, just because we do see more claims that occur as a student pilot. As you add more hours, we typically do see a decrease overall in a group. Pilots with, say, 1,000 hours, to throw a number out there, may have less claims than the group as a student pilot. So their rates tend to be a little bit lower.
Yeah. I guess I was thinking about, like, there's this thing where, you train all your hardest for the first, 200 or 250 hours, you get your commercial, whatever. And then, you're very on your game, and then you keep going on this repetitive motion of, let's say your CFI, just pad in purgatory, you just keep flying the same thing, and then you become very complacent, and that's actually like the danger zone is between like 250 hours and like maybe 1,000 hours, where people just become complacent. That's where accidents happen, and finally, as they approach the airlines, they get to the ATP, they restudy all their stuff, and then they go back into, being more safe, I guess you can say. I don't know how true that is, or if you've heard this before, or is it, am I talking off the wall here, or I don't know.
We do see that, especially with the taxi incidents. That's where we tend to see it, is that newly minted private pilot is very, very cautious, very, very on it, very aware of what's going on, where, as you said, the complacency tends to kick in. You've taxied the airplane 15 million times down this same exact runway. You know where everything is. So you're not paying quite the attention that you should. And unfortunately, we do see claims come in that instance where you're just unaware that you are just slowly edging over to the side of the runway. Not quickly, but if you were looking outside, you would notice you're doing it. And by the time you realize you're closer to the edge than you should be, it's usually because you've heard something hit the wing.
Got it. Yes, so yeah, if you're post 250 hours, like a lot of us are, and you're trying to train to be the airlines or whatever, don't stop learning. Just keep on practicing.
Exactly.
Keep on being a safe pilot, because I think that's, I did hear that somewhere around post 250 hours, like that's the complacency zone. And technically, I'm in that boat, so I guess I better pay more attention when I taxi the airplane. So we are nearing towards the end of the call here. We have about 15 minutes left. I will open up the floor to questions. I know we have a few people on the audience here. We already had some in the beginning. I will kind of continue on with the questions, and we'll kind of wrap up. My last question here is, as I have you on the podcast, are there any common misconceptions about aviation insurance that people might have? Any kind of biases that people have about aviation insurance as a whole? And what are some things that we can clear up and demystify for our audience?
There's a couple of them. One, we'll start with the non-owned aircraft policy. A lot of people are under the misconception because they have a non-owned policy, an owner can let you fly their airplane, and that's great for everybody involved. But you need to know that that non-owner policy is designed to protect you as the pilot. It does not extend out and cover the owner for things he should have covered. His liability, for instance, for allowing you to fly his airplane, if you're not listed appropriately or covered under his policy, your policy is going to take care of you, and for you, it's a great way to take care of it. However, the owner's policy is going to say, well, you let somebody fly that wasn't approved, we're not going to provide any legal defense, we're not going to pay out on your behalf. And that's a very common misconception. As far as on the other thing we see a lot is that the flight schools tend to think that by you having a non-owner policy, they may not necessarily need to have aircraft damage on it. They believe that because they're renting it to you now, you're responsible for any and all damage that occurs while you have it. The non-owner policy is only designed to cover the damage you're liable for. So you actually have to have done something to cause the damage, not something that a third party did, a natural phenomena such as weather, or a maintenance type issue, or a mechanical failure, as the case may be.
So yeah, you got to get your insurance on lock. Get it done correctly.
Right. And when in doubt, I would say if there's something you're thinking of doing or want to explore letting someone use your airplane, my best advice is to talk to your insurance company, find out what truly is or is not covered so that you don't end up in a position of having no coverage, because that's not good for anyone involved.
Yeah, you definitely want to be covered. And I think it's kind of a grotesque topic. In general, insurance, because we don't want to have these things happen to anyone, But at the same time, as sane people or people that want to prepare and be correct, I think we have to have these measures in place. That way, if that's why it's called insurance, I guess, is that you have that insurance to that if something does happen, you have a fallback and you're not completely out of pocket. And it's also a way to protect your investment. As the owner of an aircraft, you want to make sure you have insurance, because if something does happen, you don't want to just lose like $100K or $200K down the hole. You want to have something in there. So very good tips and advice from Kim Skipper. We're gonna get into. I don't think there's any questions that have gone to the chat recently. If you do have a question, guys, make sure you drop it in there. We're gonna get into kind of like why people should choose Avemco. I'm gonna give you the floor Kim to kind of promote Avemco for a little bit. Maybe get Marcy or Megan on here to do some marketing for you. What makes Avemco different than other aviation? What makes Avemco different from other aviation insurance providers, and why should people choose Avemco?
Basically, we are the only direct writer in the industry. We're going to stand behind the claim. We're going to stand behind the product that we're selling because we're the ones that are going to actually write the check at the end. We have been doing this since 1961. And this is all we do. We don't write homeowners insurance. We don't do auto. We don't do buildings and structures. This is all we do. And you have the ability to talk to the actual company to get the answers. You're not talking to someone that is relaying the information back and forth. We offer fair rates. We've got a good reputation as far as claims. Safety is very important to us in that we sponsor a lot of safety seminars. We put a lot of information out in the marketplace about trends we're seeing to help pilots become better pilots, or at least make them aware of things that they're seeing.
Kind of reminded me something about, like, we said the best rates. We kind of skipped over and glossed over the discount stuff. So I know the discounted, I was referring to, I think there's different pricing depending on how many hours you have and what your certificates and ratings you hold. But there are other ways to get discounts too, right? There are. I believe it starts with a W. Is that right?
Yeah, Wings.
Okay.
If you participate in the Wings program, we have what we call the Safety Rewards program. Wings is just one of the many ways to fulfill that. But it's for doing training above and beyond, because we do find that the more you train, the less likely you are to have a severe claim. It's not to say you won't have one, but you may walk away from it, which is ultimately everyone's goal. We also are involved with the Wings in that we are the provider of the Wings pins. We actually fulfill and pay and supply them.
I didn't know that. Oh,
yeah.
Wow. So is it getting like a IPC or BFR also part of that, or no? As far as
if you would do it
currency?
more than just if you do your BFR, instead of doing it every 2 years, you did it every year, that would qualify.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, so those are some discounts. I knew about the Wings program a little bit. Like, you can get a discount if you're doing continuous education as a pilot. So really good out there. Start networking, guys. Join the FAA safety team. Go to the meetings. Get your Wings credit, and keep flying.
Right.
Okay. So those are the discounts and great rates. Let's talk about, if I am a pilot and I'm thinking about switching providers or looking for getting insurance, how do I get started with working with Avemco?
You can do a few different things depending on your preferred method of contact. You can give us a call, you can email us, and you can actually start quotes on our website at avemco.com. You also find copies of the actual terms and conditions of most of our policies out there, so you actually can read what is or is not covered. On the non-owned side, the rates are actually available out there as well, and all our safety information, all the newsletters we've done, all the articles we've written, they're all out there available to be read whether you're a customer or not. So there's a wealth of information and material out there.
I do get I don't know if it's monthly or weekly or quarterly. I do get, so I don't check my personal email too often because I'm too busy at work. But then I think on my personal email, I am on your mailing list. And there was some good articles. Like, there's one that was about like basic med versus medical certification. There's another one there's a bunch of good resources out there that they provide, just the general aviation pilot. And they have good resources. So I really recommend reaching out to Avemco. Is there any okay, so I'll open the floor up one more time to the audience as well. If you have questions, make sure you drop them in the chat. Otherwise, we will kind of conclude here. Is there any last call to actions you would like the audience, so whether it's flight school owners, renters, student pilots, CFIs, all those type of different people listen to this podcast. Any last kind of word of advice or call to actions for our audience from Avemco?
If you've got insurance questions, give us a call. We're more than happy to help and assist, explain what you're looking for, provide you the quotes that you may need, or help you understand maybe you are looking to come from a different company. We can help you understand maybe what you're getting differently in your policy versus our policy.
Awesome. Yeah, I really recommend Avemco. They're one of our partners here at Right Rudder Marketing. They are one of the good ones. So I think there's a bunch of aviation insurance out there. Do your due diligence. I think that's what I would recommend. And same thing when I talk to flight schools that are looking to do marketing. I say, we're not the only ones out there. There's a bunch of other companies out there. I think whatever works for you as the pilot or as the business owner, you're going to know the decision. So do your due diligence. Check out Avemco at avemco.com. I'm going to give a small call to action for Right Rudder Marketing to end the podcast here. My name is, again, this is Tim, and I'm really happy to have Kim on our episode today. She's been a really great host, a really great guest, really insightful. I thought it was very interesting to hear about the breaks that, it's a trend going up. I would have never thought that would be a trend for aviation insurance claims. So very insightful stuff that we heard from Kim today. If you are a flight school or are starting a flight school and you're looking to increase your students, if you're looking to do some marketing and get your name out there, I highly recommend reaching out to Right Rudder Marketing. Check our website out. We have webinars, we have podcasts. We give all these free resources out so that way either you can do it yourself or when you're shopping for a marketing partner, whether it's Right Rudder Marketing or someone nearby, you have the knowledge you need to make sure you get the right results for your business. Check out our flight school, or check out our website. We also have the flight school handbook behind me. That is the handbook of marketing knowledge. It has all the good stuff in there. You can get on Amazon. Also, if you're a flight school, we send it away for free. Just go to our website and check it out. If you want to be on the podcast, give us a phone call. 4804-1200 is our direct line. And also, if you want to just talk about flight school marketing, or even when you need get connected with Kim or the team at Avemco, you can also contact us, and we will link you guys up. So we really appreciate everyone for hopping on the call here. Thank you for all our audience listening today. Thank you, Kim from Avemco, for being our guest. We're really honored to have you here, and we'll end here. So see you guys next time, and thank you for Right Rudder Marketing. See ya.
Thank you.